Hi, this is Bradley Barth with SC Media. I am here with Kay Chopard. She is the Executive Director of the Kantara Initiative. Kay, thanks so much for being here. I want to talk to you a little bit today about your organization and some of the initiatives that it's embarked upon in terms of building up trust in the identity space. So for starters, give us a little bit of a background around your organization.
Sure, thank you for asking. So the Kantara Initiative is a nonprofit member organization, and our focus really is all about trust. And what we look at in terms of trust and the initiatives that we really have two ways that we approach that issue. And one is with work groups that are very much like think tanks that really try to anticipate where is technology headed and what do we need to do to make sure that we are maintaining people's privacy and at the same time creating secure systems. So it's that balance of privacy and security that's really critical to ensuring trust throughout the identity management field and through this industry. And at the same time, we strongly believe that standards matter and that standards are very critical to making sure that we see that kind of trust and also the ability to build interoperability. And again, to find that balance, we find that with standards. And one of the things that is a very big part of Kantara is that we have a certification program. And that certification program actually, for companies who go through it, would give them a trust mark for identity assurance levels or authentication assurance levels in the US for NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They're standard 863. In the UK, we also do a certification program. So those are kind of the two main ways that we really try to tackle these issues.
What would you say right now, or where are some of the biggest gaps in trust in the identity space? Where is there opportunity to perhaps promote more education or better standards so that the privacy and security of individuals with a digital identity are respected properly?
Well, that's a really good question, and there are a lot of places we could talk about. So a couple that I think are burning issues, if you will. Right now, there's a lot of focus around equity, and the equity comes in a variety of ways. So the equity is in part that technology solutions that do identity proofing, right, that they're secure, that they maintain people's privacy, but also that they allow access to whatever systems, benefits, whatever people are trying to be able to get. And often the problem with equity is that systems historically have been built sort of what's the mainstream, what's the typical user. And we're finding, I think at one point we thought the outliers were really use cases far outside of that. And now we're realizing, because it's becoming more and more important, that we have these added layers of security that clearly that those who have been left out, either because they don't have access or because they aren't able to get through the process itself for whatever reason, or they're falling out because the system, we've seen a lot of things that where whatever kind of system maybe isn't catching or doesn't correctly identify for race or ethnicity or some of the others, transgender, people with disabilities, all of these different things. So that equity kind of permeates a lot of different things. And it also permeates, for many companies, how it is they're trying to create their solutions. So it's not just who the users are, but they're looking at their own workforce, their own product development teams, and at the same time, we have to make sure that we're protecting the privacy no matter who is using the system, and we have to protect the privacy of every digital identity. So that kind of leads me to the next one, if I may. One of our work groups is very focused on privacy enhancing mobile credentials. That clearly seems to be the direction that we're seeing technology move. There's a lot of capability already in the field, but the question is, how is that technology being used? What are the policies? What are we doing to protect the privacy of someone who has a mobile credential so that I don't have to I want to go buy a bottle of wine, I don't have to tell you everything about where I live and my birth date and, all kinds of other personal identifying information that, frankly, to buy a bottle of wine, you don't need. You just need to know my date of birth. So anyway, so that's some of that. And at the same time, the very fact of having a mobile credential means it's mobile, which means how do we maintain the security? What happens if we lose that? What is that, a device that can be easily hacked? How do we do all of that? So it's not just privacy, but it's also the security of that kind of technology. And those are emerging issues.
Yeah, great. And you had mentioned before, too, the importance of evangelizing various standards and controls that provide more assurance toward privacy and security being met with various identity initiatives. So, what are some of the industry standards or controls out there that the Kantara Initiative is especially emphasizing right now through its various programs?
Well, again, I go back to the statement that I made earlier that, we really feel that standards matter. We are the only organization in the U.S. to certify for the NIST 863, which is all about identity proofing, whether it's identity assurance, authentication, or federation. We're also doing this in the U.K. But the point of that is that we really support the development of standards that are meaningful, standards that can be implemented, and yet still maintain all the same things that we just talked about. And also, we're very focused, I said, on the equity, but also about trust. And that trust really has to happen because we trust that solutions that have really been third-party assessed, which is what we do, is third-party assessments, really are going to meet those standards. And what we try to educate on is that if you choose an identity provider, a credential service provider who has gone through this process, which is very rigorous, and there's a great deal of integrity built around that process to make sure that it's impartial. When an organization does that and goes through that whole process, you can rely on that, and you can trust that the solution they're offering you is going to really maintain that privacy and security balance, that it really is going to be effective in what it does without necessarily violating, people's personal information or personal rights. So to us, I think that's an area that we spend a lot of time trying to educate and trying to encourage. Sometimes it sounds old-fashioned to say we encourage integrity and trust and, truth. And those are things that might sound like old-fashioned values, but are really very much permeate everything that we do and all of our efforts.
Oh, I'm sure that never goes out of style, trust and truth. One more thing I want to ask you about. I know there's a number of initiatives, of course, that your organization are currently executing. There are two that I want to ask about in particular. One is third-party assessed assurance. The other is user-managed access.
So the third-party assurance is part of our certification program because that anyone who decides to go through that, who wants to be certified as meeting those standards, as getting a trust mark, has to be verified by a third-party assessor who's really going to, what is the word I want to say? Take a peek under the hood and really see how things are working, but also at the same time looking at what are your policies for implementing. You might have the greatest technology solution in the world, but if you have very poor policies, so it's not well implemented, it's not well executed, then that really takes away from the validity of it and the acceptance. And with that, one of our working groups is the Identity Assurance Work Group. And what they try to do is watch for how technology is emerging, how it's changing, and with that, what do we need to do so that we're certain that that third-party assurance, those third-party reviews, assessments, are really focused on how technology works today. So, you remember back in the day of paper audits, They looked very different than how audits look today. And so we want to make sure, and that's what this group does, is really try to stay on top of that and recommend new standards. A lot of their work gets fed into international standards organizations, and so it's really important that way. The user managed access, that's another work group, and it's very focused on use cases where users really have the ability to have more control, if you will, over their own private information, about their ability to do their own transactions, at the same time maintaining that security. And it's really a model that companies can take and build into their solutions so that it's really it enhances the user experience, at the same time making sure that your technology really does everything that it needs to do, so that the identity proofing task, it's often used in the healthcare industry, for example, where we're obviously worrying about patient identities, patient sharing of information, patient masking, and the user access, the user managed access really provides a very agile way to address those issues.
My guest again, Kay Chopard from the Kantara Initiative. I'm Bradley Barth with SC Media. Until next time, have a safe day online.